we have is updates from the director.
Well, first of all, the gym floor that was okayed at one previous meeting is scheduled to start on June 15th, the replacement of the gym floor here at Evergreen. The only thing left to do is pick out a color, and Mr. Maltoff and Mr. Pfeffer and myself will look at that. We've got color samples in now to get an idea what kind of color we want to go with. So that'll be done starting June 15th. I just got that date today. I'll kind of go through it building by building here with what we have. I also received a letter or an email actually last week from ESI, which is the control company for this building. They're kind of in the same boat that Honeywell was in last year. Chris, you're more familiar with this than anything. At the end of this year, they will no longer have support for their system, just like Honeywell does because of the operating system that it operates on. So I have a meeting scheduled with Canon and their gentleman Monday the 20th to come in and really tell us exactly what we're up against, what's going to happen, what we need to do, what they need to do. So I'll know more about that for next month. Okay. Also along the same lines, I had a meeting with two gentlemen from Honeywell on energy conservation and different things. Walked them through all the buildings, showed them boilers, what we had, hot water systems, so on and so forth. They're going to put together a report as to where we might be able to save some energy costs, one thing or another. They were concerned with the lighting in this building, which we're aware of that needs to be taken care of. But they took all the utility bills with them, and they were going to do a cost analysis versus LED and or T8s, just so we've got some kind of a better idea as to what kind of cost savings we could have either way. Concrete replacement of this building, which we talked about a couple of meetings back. That's the drive area back here by the dumpsters. I finally got someone to come in today. Kirk Concrete out of Union Grove came in, took some measurements. I don't have a quote back from them. They were just in today, so I'll get theirs, and hopefully I can get someone else to come in. I tried to get people to come in last week, and nobody was returning my phone calls, so we'll keep working on that.
About the front sidewalk?
The breakout areas are where I'm going to try that patch one more time. I called that company, Watco, to find out why they didn't adhere. They said it was possibly two reasons: temperature and or there's like a primer that you can use prior to putting that stuff down. Because of the extreme deterioration of that concrete, they suggested I get some of that primer and try that along with, because it held in a couple areas, but were the real big areas where it pulled out, we're going to try it again and see. If not, well, then we'll have to have them replaced. But it's worth one more because we've got the material. I don't have to buy any more material. That'd just be a 5-gallon bucket of the primer. So we'll try that again once everybody's gone, because they like to step in. That's it pretty much for Evergreen. Again, we're going to do just our normal summer painting of different areas. This year it's the gym office, Mr. Maltoff's office, and touch up the hallways and do another stretch of the hallway, the two-color, where we haven't finished that yet. We do a little section of that every year. Fox River.
Ken, there is a request by the early childhood parents that there be some type of marking for the drop-off procedure.
Painting of the parking lot, right?
Just because they get tied up in crossing their younger kids. We could touch base on that.
Right. Jumping over the Fox River, again, I'm getting some quotes on putting the cafeteria doors from the hallway to the cafeteria on some sort of automatic release. So in the event of a lockdown, someone doesn't have to step into the doorways to close those doors if there are lunchtime or some other activity going on in the cafeteria. Still waiting to get the quotes back on that. Kind of along the same lines, we're also looking at replacing all of the stair treads at Fox River. They're so worn, they have no aggregate left to them, and we put some tape on it a couple of years ago. It works, but it holds the dirt so bad. So now we're looking at either putting in aluminum ones that are lined for more traction so the kids don't slip on the stairways or some other type of material. They've got also some that have little carpet inserts that are easily to clean with a carpet cleaner, so we're getting a cost on those. In conjunction with Evergreen's lighting, we're looking at that. Gym lights in that building are the only lights that never got replaced during the remodeling process 10 years ago, 12 years ago. So those are still T12s up in the gym there. They now hopefully have a, excuse me, a direct retrofit that we can leave the fixtures up there, because the fixtures, that ceiling is still questionable material. We don't want to get involved in some sort of activity with that. So now that they do make a direct replacement, we can get a cost on that.
The T12 LED?
Well, both ways, LED and or T8s. Breaking it down. Right now they're 8-foot T12s. We break it down into 2 4-foot, on each line. Along with that lighting, also the outside canopy lighting. I mean, we're down to where half the fixture, 3/4 of the fixtures don't work anymore, can't be repaired anymore. They're either, the ends are broke out, so we're looking at replacing those with LEDs. Outside lights, that's, if you notice in the front of Evergreen here too, the 2 round lights, one is missing. We're got one kit coming in with an LED retrofit that'll fit that fixture, but it'll be an LED light, and we're just going to try those 2 and see how that works, see how it looks, see how it works for other, other applications for LEDs outside. Fox River is also scheduled for seal coating this year, seal coating and striping, so I'm getting costs on that. That pretty much wraps it up for Fox River from my end. Moving on to Trailside, getting quotes on repaving the parking lot and the 2 little entrances into the parking lot. We had discussed that last year, we patched it, but now it's to the point where it needs to be recoated in some fashion, either completely tore up and repaved, or doing something with that. And then also, when I talked to the 2 contractors thus far that I've talked to, I said, just give me a line item to seal coat the whole thing. As long as we're going to replace the parking lot, let's do the whole thing, and that building is out of the way for 3 years or so. Woodfield, the only thing I have going on at Woodfield for the summer months would be seal coating and striping of their asphalt. Again, don't have any quotes back or costs back on that yet. A couple little things that I've been working with too, with the rec department. Once the gym floor here was okayed, talked with Sue Schuyler, the director of the rec department. We thought that would be a good gym, or a perfect gym, to put another scoreboard in, an actual digital digital scoreboard, because we have the bleachers in there, and there's seating capacity for tournaments and so on and so forth, versus Trailside or Woodfield, because there are no bleachers. You take up a lot of the floor space with chairs and everything. So we're looking at potentially putting a scoreboard in the Evergreen gym once the floor is in, and then also finishing up the outdoor volleyball court. We're going to put in a grass court over there rather than a sand court.
Would that scoreboard come out of the rec program?
Yeah, I talked with Sue, she was for it. I had conversation with Mr. Yoke, and he thought it was a good idea also. So that way it would give them 2 gyms to simultaneously hold tournaments in close to one another, as far as busing of kids or other schools or whatever it would be. So.
What about the blacktop right outside these doors?
We didn't do much. I didn't do anything with Evergreen. I mean, yeah, it's in bad shape, but I thought the concrete is in worse shape right now.
At the receiving dock?
Yeah, get the receiving dock taken care of. I mean, that might be a project for next year.
Okay.
Yeah, because next year, then this building is scheduled for seal coating, so it might be a time then to look at replacing that also. But that's down the road. Right now, I think we had more of a concern with the concrete back there.
And is the painting, is that any different?
Pardon?
The painting that we talked about, is that any different?
The painting?
Painting for Whitfield for the summer, is that any different?
That's just our general summer
General.
painting. Right.
It's a regular schedule.
Right.
I take it you've got input from all the principals then on what they need done to their
The
buildings?
painting, yeah, I've got the schedules and everything of what areas they want done and whatever, yeah. As soon as the painter will be in next week to put together a quote, through all the buildings and get a quote on that.
Do you have anything, Dan?
No, the only thing I would question is there a regular cycle to review all the equipment outside to see if anything needs painting, repairing on all the activity equipment, the playgrounds?
The playground equipment?
Yeah.
We do an inspection on it twice a year, the maintenance department does, and now I think it's in May, I'm going to another class or a seminar, they've park and recreation, something or other, for playground inspection and or maintenance, and what really needs to be done, what kind of logs need to be kept, and that type of thing in the event something should happen, so we've got the paper trail to follow it. But right now, I mean, we do a twice a year inspection on it, and we look at it periodically, or, excuse me, or if someone's out there playing and they let the office know that, hey, we found this screw loose or out or whatever, in between our inspections, but other than that, yeah.
Yeah, because obviously May would be a good time to review it and
Right,
get ready to order components for the summer install, or paint it, obviously.
right,
Okay.
When are the cedar chips due again? Next year?
next year, yeah.
Anything else, Dan?
Nope.
Motion to adjourn?
Seconded.
All in favor? All right, we're done.
Yeah. Call to order Personnel and Finance Committee, and we're piggybacking with Transportation Committee.
Yep.
So first thing, monthly budget review and check ledger. What say you, John, anything interesting?
Nothing too interesting and nothing out of the norm.
Okay.
What I expected to see.
Anybody, any questions on the check ledger?
Let my questions answered.
Okay. All right, then we shall move on. I did have one thing, Chris, on the WCA Group Health Trust, because obviously it is one of the largest items we have in our budget. When is the report on WCA coming in?
Met with the broker last Thursday or Friday, and we hope to have a quote by the end of May.
Okay. Any projections on their part?
He said so far our loss ratio was favorable for us.
Okay.
But I also told him that we may want to not just look at one vendor, that he may have to bid out to a couple other vendors too, depending on what the rate comes back at.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Yeah, because obviously we want to reduce the amount of paperwork that our employees have to do each time we change vendors. So,
Right.
that would be important.
We've had real good experience with the current vendor, so it's gone very smoothly.
I would attest to that, yeah. All right, anybody any questions on the budget here today? So right now we're at, what are our expenses?
We're at about 52% expenditure, and we're over 75% through the fiscal year.
Great. That would be good. We're going to need every extra nickel we have at the beginning of the school year.
And then revenue is right on target in contrast to last year, so it's where we would have expected it.
Okay. Any large purchase items that will be moved into this year that you don't currently have on here that you're interested?
I think a lot's going to depend on what comes back with some of the maintenance pieces.
Okay.
As far as some large expenditures, parking lot resealing and those types of bids.
All right.
And then if there's any other technology pieces that need some replacement yet.
Yeah, I mean, the parking lot would be a big one.
Yeah.
We can squeeze that into this year's maintenance budget.
And there's enough cushion to be able to do that, so.
Okay. Yeah, I know, I'm just thinking if we want to get it audited into this year, need to get it sooner rather than later.
Correct. Right.
So when's the architect's contract up?
End of this fiscal year.
So we should take some bids on that too.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one of those ones we did that when we retired back in
It's always, but you gotta keep them.
Yeah. No,
I don't think we did last year, so it's on the cycle to get billed this year.
All right, then move on, I guess, to, any questions on that? Move on to student transportation contract.
We're approximately halfway through a 3-year agreement with Dawson Transport, and as they've foreshadowed for us in the bidding process that they look for a rolling 3-year contract, and so he forwarded the contract proposal to the district. That would go through the next couple of school years then. The projected increases are 2% for, let's see here, 2% for 15-16. 16-17 would be a 1.5%. It's consistent with the work with the high school, and it's been a pleasure working with the group. So I recommend approval to the full board next week.
They're working quite a bit with you on the 4K also.
They have been.
Very receptive.
Very receptive. He's gone above and beyond as far as different route scenarios and conversations. He's very accessible.
Has there been any more discussion with them for the GPS capability on the buses?
It's installed already. It's been used.
Okay, is it online for parents?
Yeah, I don't know. Yes.
I think originally when we discussed with Nelson, that was one of the things parents would be able to know where the bus was, so they have to wait for 15, 20 minutes on the hold with their child because the bus was going to be late. I'm sure it'd be cool to have an app and GPS.
Some districts do.
Do they? Yeah, I mean,
I've been reading about that some districts have.
yeah, if you got the capability, I don't see why. I mean, for that matter, I'm sure the app could put a localized region around your house to say the bus pulled in that area with this GPS, it'll trigger your phone to say, time to bring Timmy up to the bus stop. I mean, who knows in today's world, right? But then you ask Nelson
Sure.
what they're going to do. I mean, maybe they're thinking that already, but
Well,
now with 4K out there, this is much more important.
Hey, weren't you on the interview committee when we bid this out?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, I guess I appreciated the fact that they were willing to jump to the GPS right away, and they've used it quite regularly with times that I've called in and said they.
So when you call in, it's accessible through calling.
Yes.
The question will be is if it's accessible to other parties
Right.
without having to call it. That'd be the important one. But other than that, I mean, we've done very well with them. And I think we've saved a considerable amount of money at our middle school, moving that with the high school. On some of the buses, so.
The approximate monthly savings is about $3,000, so it's normal.
All right, so is that going to the regular meeting then?
That'd be my recommendation.
I would favor moving that. Sounds like Dawn is too, so the regular meeting. All right, if there's nothing else to say, student transportation, let's move on to budget planning, 2015-16.
Just a couple of updates for you. And this will tie into P&C a little bit later. What I'm going to need feedback on from committee members before we move forward handbook pieces to the full board are some financially tied things that are in the current handbook. One is the cash in lieu piece for related to employees' insurance. I do have a call into legal counsel about that because I had gotten 2 different communications actually from the last 2 work days about the need to potentially change that, if not eliminate it. So I'm checking on that. In other words, can we keep it? And if we can keep it, do we need to change what we're currently reimbursing it? So those are the 2 questions. I had to send him some figures as far as insurance rates and some employee income information to help compute that calculation. So that's the first thing. The second piece is credit reimbursement. Currently, we reimburse $175 for pre-approved credits, and then there are certain certifications that we reimburse at $250 for. And my recommendation is that we actually increase the certifications or expand the certifications that we offer increased reimbursement for to include special education and library media. And what's driving that is just an overall shortage industry-wide in those 2 areas. And then the third piece is did you want to keep the teacher retirement post-employment benefit at $6,000 for 8 years? So those are the three questions that we'll need clarification on. As I just mentioned to Dan when he asked his question, we expect a health insurance bid for 15-16. And remember, our premium goes from September through August, so it runs the school year. So we expect a projected bid in late May. Salary increases, total salary increases that are projected for next year are $143,000. So that includes the teachers, administrators, and support staff, and all those were approved. As far as what I'm hearing with the reduction of the $150 per kid in the governor's budget proposal from February, that equates to about $225,000 for us. What I'm hearing from legislatures, both in the press and in breakfasts and things that I've gone to, is that there isn't a lot of support for that, that it would probably stay as is, not necessarily increase. And the good news is that apparently the revenue projections are ahead of what they base the budget proposal on. So I just wanted to let you know about that. Other than that, the significant budget piece that you, of course, we'll be looking at is taking on 4K for next year as far as an expense piece. So those are the big pieces, otherwise everything else would be held the same. So with all that said, say for example the state doesn't come through with that $225,000. The areas to look at as far as reductions, I would target 3 if I were reviewing this. The 3 areas would be you can adjust the health insurance pieces with employees. You can reduce the amount that is in the buildings and grounds and maintenance budget, and you can also slow down the technology purchases. We have a significant amount. We've done a lot in technology the last couple of years. So what I'm saying is that you've got cushion in the budget to shift money around if you need to for next school year, and then you do have a healthy fund balance too. And hopefully you wouldn't have to go with that, but anyway, that's what I wanted to foreshadow for you as far as the budget pieces.
What do you estimate 4K or 400?
I'd say around 400 right now. Yeah.
So we've been 750 maybe, somewhere around there.
Right.
Okay.
Mary, was there anything else that you want to add, budget-wise, or? Okay. Just want to double check. Sure.
So the cash in lieu of, we were looking for more clarification from
legal counsel because of what the federal government might do. Right, right.
Because I think they're going to get rid of lieu of annuities. Or they'll be repositioning something different, which are taxed on.
So if you're okay with that, I will come back hopefully with a more concrete figure at next week's meeting as far as what that recommendation is. But are you okay holding credit reimbursement at about the same levels and expanding that? And then my question is, what did you want to do about the teacher returning piece?
Credit reimbursement at first. What was the increase over the last year or two in credit costs?
It's gone down.
It's gone down substantially.
You just want to add the library, media, and special education to
I
it?
do, yeah.
For extra 50?
Typically, we historically, we've budgeted $50,000 to $60,000 for credit reimbursement over the years, and this year we're at about $10,000 expenditure on that.
No, I'm not asking for expenditures, I'm asking what the cost per credit hour is.
Depends what university you're taking it from and whether it's face-to-face or online.
Okay. What would you estimate it to be if you were going for a admin or reading or library media specialist position, what would it have done over the last 2 years?
That part's gone up.
Okay.
I'd probably have to go back and look specifically what.
I would assume at least 5% over the last year.
Yeah. Because the quantity, they've had to increase costs because the quantity of people going back to graduate school and just taking credits has actually decreased.
Okay.
So I can go back, I can check on that for you.
What I'm anticipating is at least increasing the credit reimbursement. They were outlaying even faster fact that you say we're not spending it, I see no purpose in not increasing it. If the cost is there and we're not using the expenditure, we've got money in there for it. What do you think?
Yeah, I would think that like free credit course in time is right now.
Per credit?
With free credits.
For three.
Yeah, you know, for some of the courses like in special education, things that I've seen, so.
So, but that would hold pretty accurate then, because we're offering 175 per credit. So 3 would be about $570.
Right.
Do you think 175 is adequate? Or does it really make a difference because we're offering the exact pay amount, right? We're not offering above and beyond.
We're not offering a loan yet.
Right.
So, I mean, if that's what you're saying, really doesn't make a difference. If you increase it, it's not going to hurt anything. I mean, if that be the case, we have money for it. We're pretty close already, but some may cost more than others. So I wouldn't have a problem saying that I'm in favor of increasing it and putting like a number of 185. You know, less than 10%, but 185.
Our reimbursement is approved credit.
Yes.
I think adding special ed and library community specialist is very smart to do, especially special education, library community specialist. You know, really need so many of the special education. I think is something we've had some turnover in.
Well, those are 250 credit.
Right.
Do you think that's inadequate?
No, I think
That's probably more than one of those.
Yeah, we just added, we were adding.
I'm just saying more ones. I don't have an issue with a per credit increase in that one.
right. Because we aren't spending.
We're not spending any use.
Yeah.
If somebody has a different university they're going to that 175 is not covering it, that's really what we're taking out by increasing that. That's all good?
Okay.
85 on that?
Thank you.
Anybody else have thoughts on that? No? And then, let's do the other admin library media. I don't have a problem with having library media specialist and, special education, that only makes sense. Teacher retirement on there. I would be very in favor of, and we've discussed this many times, of actually being additive of the number of years of service by the, and Keith does this already, although he's lower his over the years now. But it should be like a rate of whatever it may be, 2,000 per year times the number of years of service or something, which could be adjusted in the future. And that way, if you're here 30 years, guess what? 30 years equate to 60,000. You're only here 20 years, well, 20 years is 40,000. So to me, if you're here, this limits you at a number of 48, which I don't think is a bad number in relationship to surrounding districts. But I think that longer years of service is what we're striving for. So I'd be additive on that is what I would like to see. I don't know about that. Right now, it's just a fixed number.
Right.
Right.
Right now, we said, I think, it's for 20 years of service.
Right. 55 and 20.
55 years of age or older and 20 years of service, which 20 years is, sounds like a lot when you say 20 years, but 20 years from now.
So would you still keep that there, but add the longer years of service?
I think I would just shift the whole thing up and say, when that person retires, just go back based on when they started, how many years of service they had.
I think that, I'm not trying to poke words in your mouth, but I'm trying to expand on your question is there a minimum number of years?
Right.
Well, I think I would definitely have a minimum number of years of 20 in there.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
Okay, so, okay, yeah, sorry.
155 then?
Yes. However, I would still say, because we went down the road of having the HRA to supplement the account,
Yep.
and this may be a future thing you need to look at, is the intent of that was to pool that money in there, that money was self-sustaining, that the local taxpayers aren't paying for post-retirement activities. So at the rate we're putting it in here, which has been about, what, 250,000 a year, so that money's going to accumulate very fast. We should be able to be self-sustaining in no time at all, being that we've had a fair number of teachers either retire and or leave that have not accessed the ability of going after this money. So I would think the teachers that are here that are in that realm even if they go to a 30-year retirement point, you're gonna have more than enough money to pay out at $2,000 a year, so I don't really see an issue with that.
I'm fine with what you were recommending, Dan, as long as we keep 20 years at the minimum.
Yeah,
Okay. $2,000 per year then, is that what I heard?
I would say 2,000 per year, 20-year minimum, and not to exceed, I guess it really is irrelevant. I mean, somebody wants to work to the 35, 40 years here, so be it.
Any other thoughts?
How is that paid out versus what it's done now? Because it's,
Well, here the problem's going to be, and it's again back to Obamacare, it's the unforeseen consequences of something not really well thought out, is they're going to now come back after things like this, which are a real boon to some people in the work environment and others a detriment to it, right? So these will be dictated by what Obamacare is going to do, and most likely won't be an HRA in the future. It'll be pushed over to a 403B or something of that nature. So I think right now we're okay leaving it as we're saying HRA and taking money out of HRA and assigning it to that. However, I think you also have a good negotiating factor there because you can say, okay, you're at 25 years, we can renegotiate somebody and say, we'll put it into 403B, and it may be something that's something more powerful to them. But right now, as it stands, we do 8 years payout on it, so even if it's 60,000 at 8 years, we do fine.
So keep the payout and spread over 8 years.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
But you know how that's going to transpire in 2 years from now, the rules will change like that, so.
Well, the way around that is to, and you were just talking about it just a few seconds ago, is rather than have it go towards health insurance, that it just is put in for a 403B. And
Yeah.
we can structure the HRA that way. It would be a TSA contribution.
Now, the only issue I have with that whole thing is what it equates to then is double or triple retirement funding. Some districts versus other districts. And I don't necessarily like that idea. Before it was restricted to only payouts on healthcare. So I think future boards will have to make a determination if that's palatable to everybody else to say, you're giving money as a retirement fund. Because then they can say, okay, well, I've got all this retirement money. Retirement money is not something anybody can go after. It's locked up, right? So you could say, I got all this retirement money, nobody can tackle it. I'm on Medicare, and for that matter, I don't know, what short Medicare would take care of it.
Medicare can't go on for 65.
Yeah, so, but once you do go on Medicare, right, you don't necessarily need that kind of payout to equate to a supplemental insurance program. So there's a lot of ramifications in the future, but I think right now as a target, I'd say we equate it to something you can accumulate past 48,000, and I think it's a benefit to long-term employees.
You want them for staying here 30 years?
Anybody else, anything else? Those all answer your questions?
It does, thank you.
Okay. Anything else on personnel, finance, and or transportation?
I would just be bringing the summer music contracts next week for approval. This week, how's that?
Okay, are you going to forward the things you just discussed to the board for approval on that, or where's that going into? That's,
Do that. That's fine.
I was going to say, that's your addendum on the handbook, right?
Yes.
Amen.
Yeah.
All right, in that case, I think we're done with personal finance. Anything more?
Thank you.
Okay, you're adjourned. You're adjourned.
All right, we call to order the Policy and Curriculum Committee. First on our agenda is 4K update.
you what 4K could potentially look like next year. And so the purpose of this is to show you what 4K would look like if it was housed only in the 3 elementary schools versus if it was housed in the 3 elementary schools and a partnership site. Something to think about is, are we going to partner with anyone? Rainbow Preschool does have a larger interest in enrollment, and so that's why we looked at possibly partnering with them if we are going to be partnering with a community site. This is just a breakdown of what the first choices were by the families. If you look, Evergreen has a population of 26 that were interested, Trailside 13, Woodfield 35. The off-site possible locations, Rainbow 7 and Today's Child 1. You may notice that Evergreen, Trailside, and Woodfield would still have room for additional enrollment within those 3 buildings. This is a breakdown of the cost, program costs without the teacher's salary, without the teacher's aide salary. This would be if we just had the 4K within the 3 elementary schools. The room setup would include the big purchase items such as the furniture, the teacher's desks, the chairs, the tables, bookshelves, the file cabinets, things like that. And then multiply by 3 for 3 different classrooms. Splashing Pre-K is a program that was chosen to utilize for the 4K next year. Multiply that by 3 for the 3 classrooms, it'd be $9,000. The supplemental supplies would include some consumable materials like chart paper, paint, and yarn and chalk and things like that, but also items that would go along with the program that are not included in the splash, such as like the magnifying lenses and toy instruments, bean bags, things like that. The cost of the FIAD teacher, because we will be having FIAD once every week. Technology, things like iPads, and you'll see the total there is about $45,000, and that would be just for the 3 elementary schools. The second option then, if you would add a site, an off-site partnership, we would be multiplying those numbers essentially by 4 because we'd be setting up another classroom somewhere else. So the room setup is multiplied by 4. Splashing the Pre-K would be multiplied by 4. Same with supplemental supplies. FIAD teacher costs would go up a little bit as well. Technology multiplied by 4, but also we would have to add a smart board to that location. And in the schools, we already do have the smart boards within the classroom, so that would be a cost of the schools. And then there's the per child reimbursement to the partners. With the 7 enrolled at Rainbow, it would be $21,000, but of course that would change depending on enrollment. So if you look at that information, if we did add an off-site location, it would be about $38,000 extra.
I just would like to know that the room setup, wouldn't Rainbow Preschool be accountable for their room setup? So that figure, that top figure would be times 3, it would just be your guys' setup.
It wasn't determined yet whether or not the site would pay. Usually the first time around in a collaborative partnership, the school district would pay for initial things and then the partnership site would pay for the upkeep and continuous use.
Okay, I thought we had to supply the furniture and stuff.
Changes in our kindergarten enrollments and classes that we did have filled, do we have some of those room setup items already here in the district?
We do, it would be determined on how many kindergarten classes we have and all of that. So in order to make a good judgment, yeah, in order to make an easier judgment,
Sure.
Price it out. What we would utilize first, what we have odds and ends of things.
Okay, we have that piece of the update. My part of the update is following up on transportation questions from last month. In talking with the bus company, I want to make it really clear they're willing to work with us and be flexible. With that said, there are a couple of thinking points or talking points I wanted to share with the group to help in your decision making as far as busing. The big question stemming from the last month's meeting was, can we run a separate bus route to the 4 wraparound providers? The answer is yes to that, except what you need to understand is that that would be adding another route into the equation as far as finances is concerned. Okay, so you would have that go on, and so you're looking at an additional cost with that. The second piece related to that midday piece, and I think Grant brought it up when we were bouncing that idea around, is that then you're going to have to stagger dismissal times. Yes. Okay. Because right now we're scheduled to go 8:30 to 11:30 and 12:30 to 3:30, and if we're running one bus around to hit the 4 wraparound sites, they can't be in 3 buildings or at 3 buildings at the same time. So you've got that timing piece. The other part too is from an efficiency standpoint. Is say we start over at Woodfield at Shirley's building, swing over to Evergreen. We'll be driving by most of those wraparound sites to go over to Trailside to pick those Trailside kids up before we start dropping those youngsters off. Does that make sense to you? Mm-hmm. Or if we started at Trailside, we'd be going by most of those wraparound sites before we get to Chris's building here at Evergreen and Shirley's at Woodfield to get those youngsters that would go to the wraparound sites. So it's feasible to do it, but from the efficiency standpoint, a cost standpoint, and just a timing, scheduling standpoint, it may not be the best solution. The second question I was asked to look at is, can we add in pickups in the morning and drop-offs at the end of the day to the bus routes? And again, the response was, of course we can do that, we will work with you. It would work easiest to add those drop-off spots to those 4 wraparound care spots. That's what I'm talking about, those 4 wraparound care pieces, locations I should say. It would work easiest to have that at the end of the day, okay? And the reason why not at the beginning of the day is there's approximately an hour cushion between the Fox River routes that are being done, doing the 3 elementary routes, and so we would be adding extra spots or extra pickup points, slowing down the running of those morning routes, and possibly crisscrossing over some routes as well. So it can be done, it's just the limited amount of time in the morning. The other piece, and this is important too, especially with 4-year-olds and even 5-year-olds, is the way that they've thought or sketched out possibly adding the 4 wraparound spots into the busing routes. It's going to result in longer riding times for those 4 and 5-year-olds, especially at the end of the day. Except for probably the Trailside case, because most of the wraparound care spots are in the Trailside area. So the pieces you need to know there is, yes, it's feasible, but you're looking at increased riding time, especially for the 4-year-olds. And in the morning, the time is very, very compact due to the Fox River drop-off and then the elementary route starting up right after that. So that's the information that I have for you. The only other piece that was shared is that, again, they're willing to work with us in any way we can, but it's going to probably be a couple months now because we need to find out for sure who's riding and who'd be interested, if anyone, in transportation to the wraparound cares. So driving back to this big point then, which really prompted the whole question at Transportation Committee last time, is Woodfield Schools got its WASP provider who's more than willing to offer the wraparound care in Woodfield's attendance area, likewise with Trailside. The concern was Evergreen School didn't have a wraparound care provider within its attendance boundaries of our current bus providers. So does that bring us back to the point of simply providing transportation of the evergreen wraparound care students to today's child? Because they are the WASP provider here and already have relationships with those parents and families in place. So that, a lot of information all at once, but that's what you'd ask me to go back and investigate.
So we have 3 wraparounds, or,
Well, remember, the group asked me to include Rainbow in that.
okay, okay.
So it would be, plus the 3 wraparounds plus Rainbow. Yeah. All About Kids, Homestead, Today's Child, Rainbow.
I think it makes sense to do, would be a performance, to stay with your WASP providers, and that, then continue that relationship once they come to kindergarten and full day here, or to each of the schools. Well, do they have another option for transportation as far as what they were thinking maybe the most efficient, or, I mean, I know you came with those questions, but in the conversation.
There wasn't a real succinct recommendation. The conversation was they investigated and discussed among themselves if the questions that I posed were supported. And so my inference in walking away from that conversation is that if we can keep kids in their attendance areas, it's going to be a lot more cost effective, cut down on the length of the bus ride, and just more efficient from a transportation.
So now with that being said, I might thought to do Today's Child for Evergreen, just picturing where it's at today, and that's going to be a significant amount of time.
So
But the other 2 ways that you described it do make sense to not follow, and that's where that's efficient and that
One thing I think would be important is, I don't think it's correct that you make students that are non-wraparound care students sit in the bus longer because a minority of the group of students chose to go to wraparound care through the parents. So, worst case scenario is I think you do the entire bus route before you drop off, unless you're going right by the but to drive Evergreen, Today's Child, and back again, depending on the time of day, and the traffic, and who's ever getting out during that time, and who's downtown, could take a little bit of time. Now that we have stop and pull lights, it's a little faster, we have one from Chester to Waterford, right? But it's gonna last an extra 15 minutes, I guess. And the buses don't just reach downtown, so.
in response to what you had said, that was brought up in the conversation that it's likely or possible that the wraparound care kids would get dropped off last, that they would run the routes first, unless they're going right past the facility. So.
I would assume they would do the most efficient, like they would
Yeah.
I think the problem we have is some that are way up on the backside, and you go all the way back there for Evergreen, and then you get sent in the bus for an extra half hour because they're going to get very antsy, and we're not talking very young children. So
Right.
I think something ought to be done on that.
Regarding transportation, I would recommend that we keep them within their boundaries, with the exception of Evergreen and Today's Child.
Okay. For the wraparound.
Yeah,
I mean, that makes the most sense.
Sure does.
and then once we know those numbers, we can always, adjust that.
Yeah, no, I think the way you need to word that though for future use is you need to have it listed as the current wraparound provider, selected provider or something, because you can't really name it anyways. So So keep it very generalized and generic, because I think when it gets to the point, you're gonna have some bidding in the future on who wants to do it and what the bidding cost will be.
Okay.
People will consolidate, people will move around, and everything else in the room, so keep it open to whatever the current person holding that title is. One question I would have is, this was good information, however, I don't think that hit the topic of how many students per classroom. I didn't see that on there, Kathy. I mean, I see all the setup fees and everything.
Jen's got that.
Yes.
Okay.
Evergreen, it's looking like they separated it into 11 in the morning, 17 in the PM. But if there are partnership sites, there could be 2 less in the PM, so it could be 11 and 15. Trailside, of course, would there's only going to be an AM section at this point, and there are 13. But once again, if we don't have the partnership sites, there will be 16. Woodfield has 35 total. In the AM, they would have 20 if we did not have a partnership site. In the AM, they would have 18 if we did. In the PM, they would have 18 or 17 if we had a partnership.
Okay, and what was our target number on that? I forget.
18 to 20.
Okay. All right, so I guess my question is, what in there, was there any scenario in there where we were able to move 7 students out to an off-site location and still be within our margin of what we were shooting for? I mean, right now, you're assuming preschool, Rainbow Preschool is coming out of all of one facility, I'm assuming, right?
No,
No.
they're actually spread out.
Oh, they are.
Evergreen and
Okay.
Woodfield, it sounded like, from the WGSD.
We had Evergreen, there was 1 Today's Child, 1 Rainbow. Trailside, there were 3 Rainbow, and Woodfield, 3 Rainbow. So it's mixed up.
Okay.
I would guess those numbers still go up a little bit for each building.
It's really, yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm shooting Trailside, gotta go up.
Right.
I would think so.
But the real issue comes down to, as long as we filled our room and there's availability externally, that's fine. I don't see where, other than having a designated drop-off, I don't see how you shuttle kids over to a facility if there's only 3 students. You know? It'd be less expensive to bring all the students to their respective school and you pay the local provider to come pick the students up than it would be to waste putting more busing into it. Not to mention the amount of time spent on students moving around in buses. I kind of get the same feeling for after school wraparound too. Cheaper instead of having students sit in a bus a long time, have people pick them up in a van.
I don't know that they have those vehicles, frankly.
Good time to get them.
Other places do, but the Waterford,
Right.
I've been in a bigger cities, and I don't think there's a Waterford.
Yeah, I see them all the time walking. So.
Right.
Yeah. Kindergarten's been the least center.
I mean, typically you're not taking students all over the place, especially in that age, but for pickup purposes and kind of a new future we're looking at here. So.
Kathy, did we get any word back regarding any partnership grants or anything?
They still don't know about that. And the other thing that I was checking on was, that Tom wanted me to check on, was regarding the FIAD teacher. And according to the highly qualified, no child left behind, anyone who, if our students are getting FIAD services, it has to be by a highly qualified teacher, and therefore, if it's in the 4K sites, it has to be a highly qualified teacher. Anyone teaching children being paid public dollars has to follow the highly qualified statutes.
That was a pretty small additional cost in there, right, to put it up to another site? What was it?
To add the site on, I think it was 30,
Yeah, so $900 a year, that's not what it was. Okay.
38, oh, 9 for the FIAD.
Right.
Okay.
I think we were maybe hoping to have a higher number for the community sites, regarding participation there, having some in our buildings and also being able to partner. But I guess I would like to see us start that relationship with the community agency, and I'd like to see us consider going with Rainbow Preschool as a partner. Today's child only had one student after 2 registrations, but I guess 7 lower than we had wanted, but I think we have to start somewhere and hope that will grow. So I guess I would like to see us try that as a partnership, having other students at our sites.
Yeah, I'm in favor with that. It's fine.
I would agree with you. You have to start somewhere.
Right.
So the real issue will be, even if you get one provider in, and that way the subsequent years, they know, hey, there's this one provider minimum, maybe then things will change, and we'll be more
Right.
going to outside agencies, but as it is now, as long as we are filling our seats, so we're not under capacity, what I hate to see is having 10 or 12 children in a room.
Right.
Would be underutilizing the teaching staff, not only that, also the facilities, so let's try to maximize ours, and then as long as there's room, there's room. And I like the case that it's spread across the district, so.
The only other thing I'd add to follow up to what you just said is those numbers don't include the open enrollment applications.
Sure.
And I don't know yet where those, if they're siblings and where those kids would necessarily be assigned at this point, so.
All right, that question.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're going to be ready next week to make a decision on that, and that sure will be great to moving ahead in some of those areas. Okay?
Thank you.
And then the last piece, which I sent you ahead of time, and I have a copy just in case with red language on it, is the updated community partnership criteria. So were there any questions or concerns about what we had in here? Just a few changes?
The only question I have is hopefully this doesn't mean we're going to be retrofitting somebody's kitchen or something if we're serving something here, that we have to serve the same exact thing in an outside agency.
It's just a milk.
We're not providing 4K with lunch.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying, so I'm sure you need to know, I mean,
That's-
so we don't retrofit kitchens and things.
Right. Won't be
I didn't
cooking.
see anything here.
Yeah,
No,
no,
I
I
just
was like,
took
what?
out the food
I didn't put that in there.
It doesn't say that.
Number 7 was just an addition on so that it related to when we have to take the September and January attendance counts. And then 10, just to keep it more consistent with some other parts of it. 11 was just a language change. I think I said I had it like the system or something. So you would notice, so I changed that. And then for number 1, I've just put some kind of rating scale, and we can look at that within the committee. And then number 7, I changed from groups of students to escort a student, or groups of students, so that students are never alone in the bathroom. And then number 4, just added the bloodborne pathogens and EpiPen, just added that in there, and that the NVCI training would be available through the district. We have trainers for that. And then number 5, we did change the ratio from 1 to 4 to 1 to 5 to make it consistent with the kindergarten. And that the technology will be provided by the district, and care needs to be taken to ensure, but updates will be provided by the Waterford grade as well to image those machines and care for those machines. And then number 6, just I thought should be added during teacher conferences, just an easier way if we have multiple sites. coincide with the Waterford Graded School District calendar. It's just easier for parents, I think. And then, one I just highlighted because I knew somebody would ask that in the meeting tonight, so. And then, the insurance, I know Mary looked into that for me, and I just put a note on there that I'm gonna double check this before next week's board meeting yet, because she got that all back to me a while ago, and I'm pretty sure I updated it in here, but I wanna make sure of that. So, I didn't get to that, so I just put that as a note. Any questions or concerns, or anybody think of anything else that we didn't?
One thing I'm missing here is anything related to a business relationship with the agency. Meaning I see nothing in here that states that things that are purchased by WGSD are owned by WSG and will be returned if the facility chooses not to be in the program.
Okay.
I would look this over and come up with some business-related key points in here stating what's owned by who and who's paying for what.
Right.
You got a lot of who's paying for what in here, but not once it's paid for who owns. You know what I mean?
Okay.
That make sense?
Yeah, and some of that, I think, would be in the contract. I mean, this is sort of the addendum
Well,
to the contract.
I
But,
don't see anything.
yeah, I think we can put something like that in there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I would foresee some agencies trying it out and maybe possibly not liking it, and you have things.
Maybe under operations.
Waterford Graded could use for other agencies or internally.
Well, and just making sure that those items may not be used for,
Anything external.
anything that they do outside of the 4K township.
Yeah.
Because those are public funds, so they can't use those materials outside.
Yep.
Okay.
Where they have much more than that.
Okay, I'll update that and give that to you.
The next step in this, in the contract process is to send it out to legal counsel and have him draft up a more formal agreement than just see over that.
Yeah, I don't think of it.
All right, anything else regarding board pay? Good. All right, then moving on to policy updates. We had three policy updates and then two that are coming back to us.
Right. Where did you want to start? Fine.
Why don't we start with the three new ones that you brought?
Sure. Okay. Three policy revisions or updates. The first one is number 537 related to professional growth. And what we did is we updated the language in there, embedded some of the language from the existing policy, but wanted to make things more specific and succinct as far as roles, responsibilities, and targets, and those types of things. So that was the intent behind the professional growth policy. In addition to the fact that it was last looked at in November of 2000, so it just needed to be refreshed. The second one is 662.1, which is the student activity funds. And that one also, it's been quite a while since that had been looked at. And so we updated the verbiage in there, clarified, or I shouldn't say clarified, we specified more clarity on the different roles and responsibilities in dealing with the student activity monies. But there is also some language in there carrying over from the existing policy as far as making sure the advisor to the groups are making timely deposits and following certain procedures and so on. And the last paragraph is also new as far as making sure that if there's misappropriation of funds or suspected fraud or something, that's reported.
I don't have anything on that.
No. I kind of think I have a paragraph here somewhere stating what a student activity fund is. Money used and raised by district student organizations.
It sort of does.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that you should have something here stating that the PPO is not a Waterford graded student activity fund and or controlled by one greater school district.
I think that is a CTO one,
That would be.
that will be
Okay.
coming up with.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, otherwise we get the list a ton of, you know what I mean, there's
Right.
other places to get money too, but.
The last one then is a brand new policy to our collection, that's 665, fraud prevention reporting. It's a safeguard for the district to include in our policy collection. And something I'm surprised that the auditor hasn't asked to see yet, when they're going through policies and so on. So I thought it'd be an appropriate addition to our policy. And basically, it delineates a process and procedure in case fraud is expected, or not expected, but suspected, and processes that should be followed in order to report it and ensure that it doesn't Coming back to us then, 664, and this is the fund balance case, and it's a clerical error on the first page, second paragraph, where it says 25%, that should be 35%, so it's consistent with the language that's at the, or the new language at the end of the policy. And where the 35% comes from, board members, if you go through the sheet that Lene prepares for you every month in your packets, that's titled consent agenda, you'll notice the bank balance on that. And basically, if you were to study that over a course of 12 months or over a year, you'll notice that there are peaks of fund balance, and then there are valleys. Right now, we're sitting at probably our high point for the next 12 months. And so the district lives off of that because we only get substantial revenue at certain times during the year. What I'm getting at is we ran calculations, and based on that fund balance that sits there, well, I should say it sits there, that fund balance that is used over the course of the year, we expend, the fund balance is probably about $9 million right now. We spend about $7 million of that during the course of the school year. So that's the first purpose of the fund balance, is to take care of the cash flow. The second thing is an emergency, that you've got some large expense, an insurance claim, or boilers, or roof damage, or storm deductibles, or something like that. The point is, you've got the emergency backup. And then the third piece is in a way, in school districts, they call it your bond rating. If you're an individual person, it's your credit rating. So the point is the healthier your fund balance, the higher your credit rating. And when you need to go out and borrow or take out bonds for the purpose of borrowing money, the higher the credit rating, the higher the bond rating, the better rates are going to be given. And seeing that in the next couple of years, future boards are going to have to look at perhaps borrowing and going to referendum for something. It's just important to have a healthy fund balance. So the point is that 35% was derived from spending over the course of the year and how much you really need to have on hand in order to cover just the cash flow.
All right, my figures on this, anything below 35, you would be taking short-term borrowing.
You would be. Yeah.
So,
I mean, all of it was a typo.
Yes.
Right, actually, when I brought it back, I was thinking the 25% would go in both places.
No, I would stick with 35. It used to be 25 back in the day,
Right. so
and
then-
we were short-term borrowing every fall. And you're out there hoping that they're not going to nick you for a short-term interest rate, and it's just a headache as far as somebody running the district. 35 puts you at, and we've always run with 35% minimum, at least the last several years. Yeah.
And they're getting down to nitty-gritty.
Yeah. The intent of the revision of this one was to, and that's where I came in, was to add a cap on there of 50% as a sort of an aggregate percentage you don't want to exceed, because what happens now, we're seeing it this year, we're going to, and it's due in large part to good fiscal management on the board's part and on the administrator's part, that we have at the end of the year money left over. And it's because you watch all the contracts and you watch all the stuff you're paying on everything, right? And in some cases, you get lucky and gas goes down. Natural gas is down there, or the bus diesel fuel goes down. So some things you get lucky on. But in this case, what I've noticed over the last 3 years is school districts are taking that money and putting it in the fund balance. So fund balances are raising up steadily on all school districts, not us, but the neighboring ones too. And the question is, if you're fiscally sound, your fund balance is rising up. Unless you started out with the case where you're running a negative budget because you're taking it out of the fund balance. But you can only do that so long before you run into no money left. Now, this is going to be an issue if they do keep that 150 per student, or what is it now? What are they saying, 150 is it? Yeah.
Yes.
Then they're going to try to get 75 back, or the whole 150 back, or some game this way, right? But if they keep that, and plus in addition to that, 400 something on 4K, another 100 something on increases in the salary structure without any increase in the base salary, that means you're looking at several $100,000 you got to come up with. The only place that's coming up with is fund balance. So you take $1 million out of fund balance if you want to, but then you're going to knock your fund balance down to, I think that brings us down to 40% or something, somewhere around there. What are we at right now?
I'd have to crunch
45, 46.
We're probably, right now, we're probably at about 50,
50.
but that's just the time of the year.
But once you hit the end of the year, you're kind of smooth and things will settle down, and then maybe you're in the mid-40s or something, so you really don't want to go down too far. I mean, that's kind of your target, just high 30s to 40%.
Could you give us the numbers? I mean, not tonight, but can we bring this back and bring us the numbers for like the past 3 years of that, something like that?
Look at what?
The fund balance and where that's trended and what you were referring to.
You've got that information right, though, don't you? I mean, are you asking for it in a summarized document, or?
I guess just, let's do the past 3 years.
So it's wrapped or something, or only one show?
Just what it ran each month, so we can look at that, if you were saying watching those trends.
I don't know if that does anything, because what happens is you get some big purchases, and it's going to go drastically down. And then you're going to have the payoffs where you get from your state revenue, and it's going to shooting straight up. So you're going to get 60 to 65 in some months, and 20% in other months. The important one is to look in right before you get your money from the state in the fall. What is it, about November, Chris?
December.
October, December?
Usually early December.
I'm saying before you get your state funding.
It's early December.
So, yeah, so if you look at the December over like 3 years, that would show you really what the trending of your fund balance is.
I guess my question with it is, when you put a policy in place like that, and it kind of goes back, isn't this more or less a suggestion type of thing?
It sure is.
I mean, that's,
Yeah, it's a target. Yeah.
right, that's, I guess, and that's,
But what my
I don't have
issue
a problem
was, there
with
was
it,
no I in target.
okay.
Right, so, if the projections are correct, you could.
No, I agree with that, but I mean, it's, what happens if you go to 32, if it says 35, that's
You're
my
at 35
question.
and all of a sudden,
It's
the
gonna
roof
happen.
takes it down because we
Right.
had a
Right,
bad
you're gonna have to.
tornado and we ripped it off or
Right.
something. You're gonna drop down, but you're gonna strive to try and keep it at 35, say, on a short-term borrowing.
Yeah, it's a suggestion anyway, so it's,
Okay.
you're not fixing yourself.
That was my question, what the intent of it really was.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, well, the intent is hopefully when you get to the end of the year and you have a rollover, and let's say you get a good year where the state's actually giving more money per student, and not just raising a amount that you can charge local taxpayers, but giving real money. Hopefully you get to the point where the school board would say, oh, well, we're getting more money from the state, we probably should not be taking more from local people, and we had rollover from last year, and we're already at 45%, maybe we should be pushing that back to the locals to reduce their taxes and not just pile it away. What the issue comes into is the state changes the way they do the fund balance and said, you have to designate restricted fund balance, and so now everybody's pushing money into restricted fund balance, and it magically is taken out of operating fund balance, and then you say, well, okay, so we don't really have 35, maybe we only have 20, and maybe you socked away 20% in restricted fund balance. So there's always a game of how they do it, but
Sure. If every district has 50%,
yeah,
then they're gonna look at that and say you're holding too much money.
it's a good target point. And we're healthy right now, and that's not the issue. The issue comes into is if we wind up actually being able to put money away in the next future years here into the fund balance, at what point do you say, oh, we should be looking at this? That's the only purpose of it. That's why it was brought up.
So
I guess I'm puzzled because it was sent back to committee because of the typographical error.
Right, and I
And
was
so-
thinking the 25 and you were thinking the 35.
But you can't run a 25% fund balance.
I guess in our conversational, I shared with you 35. So I'm really, really confused why
And I had
we're
thought,
at 25.
I had thought 25, and that's why I pulled my stuff out from the past 3 years, because unfortunately, I got all my binders at home, and I came out and it was right around, I thought you could go lower, it's right around 35. Did you run the numbers out, Mary, that it's gonna be around 35, or?
I think we're a little higher than 35.
Yeah.
Mary was actually advocating for higher, to be honest.
You can't run a 25% fund. Oh, you can run, you're just borrowing money. You're gonna short-term borrow every single year in the fall.
I guess why was it at 25 and has it been there since 1993 when it was adopted?
Because we don't really look at it.
And we,
It's a target fund, like, for instance.
and when I got on the first 2-3 years, we were borrowing.
Right.
We got some good rates, the one year we were holding our breath, we didn't know if we would, and we finally did. Sally Jo did a good job at that time.
We had a bank too that worked with us real well.
Yes.
They didn't charge us, they charged us a flat. It
Yes.
was like $5,000, and it was just to get us through the month of November to cover payrolls, because
Yeah.
our payroll's $500,000 a month. And then we get the state funding right at the beginning of December. But that November was a real rough time. There were years before that when we held insurance bills and, paid them, hung on to them and paid them later, but we don't have to do that anymore. We're able to make all those bills, so it's a lot of pressure when you get to that time of the year and you don't have money.
Yeah, and I'd hate to see money thrown away just on interest. We've gotten to the point where we're cash flush enough that we don't have to borrow every single year.
Which is nice.
We're really fortunate. I don't think a lot of school districts are in that shape.
Yeah. That was the purpose of it.
I guess there's something wrong with seeing that data, right?
Well, I think there's going to be 3 people sitting here that don't have 3 years worth of data,
Right.
and I think it would be valuable. This is, to me, a pretty important one going forward, so I think it'd be valuable.
We also have people that know who past history they wouldn't borrow. So, the same plus and minus.
True, no, I get that, but.
That's what I said, and like I said, at first I thought, after that, I thought, well, 25, and when I was looking at the numbers, I was surprised. And, Mary's saying even more than that. And there again, it's recommendation, if something happens, you have to go below it, yeah.
Right.
This coming year, will you be able to pull out there and still have over 35%? Yes. Because that was one of the other things I looked at. Could you pull out like 1.2 and still have, yes, you could. So it wouldn't hurt the next board coming in if they won't have the money, you have to try taxing for it, the money's there.
Yeah, it's just a recommendation to future boards, so.
Yeah.
But if you want to see it, I don't have a problem.
So as far as the policy is concerned, what are we doing with it?
I don't know if everyone wants to see some data, but what do you want to see? The trend of every single month, or what do you want?
I don't have 3 years of data myself. I have about a year and 3/4 of data.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what you're talking about, is having that information, so.
Do you want to see a graph of every month over the period of time and see all the ebbs and flows, or what do you want to see?
Just November, December.
I guess probably what Dan's talking about, the graph over the year.
Can you do that, throwing that into Excel, just doing a graph of the months as they flow? The important ones are going to be the valleys. That's
Right.
what we kind of-
Right, and I understand that, but
Yeah.
I would just like to see that before
Yep.
moving it forward, so I guess it would just say.
I can do
Or
that.
can you get everything
Chris.
before a meeting?
I can do that. I have a spreadsheet that we've
Yeah.
used for short-term borrowing, where it show, you
It should show
fill
the
it
whole.
out based on your expenses and your revenues throughout the year, so you can see that.
Mhm.
Again, though, this policy came back here because of the clerical error. So I'm not understanding. Philosophically, there is no public feedback in the 2 readings that were held on this. So I thought after we got this clarified as far as the clerical piece, we could simply put it as an action item, a second reading in next week and have it approved. I'm not understanding the delay.
Could you get a graph before next week?
Sure. 5 seconds. Here's already got it. So, can Mary get you that, if you have any questions, we can bring up
Want
that?
to bring it forward? that's fine, but just so I have that
Okay, it's
information
not-
prior than
Yeah.
being asked to vote on it.
Yeah, I wouldn't want you to make a vote if you don't have to.
Right.
Just move forward with, a no.
Well, if I have the data, then I can make a decision.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, that makes sense.
Okay, you have mine.
No, sorry. What I can see a lot.
Yes, I didn't know. Was waiting.
Part of the cheap ones from Walmart. You want them?
I can see better out of them.
That way we're not afraid.
I was waiting for.
8:15, the PTO policy.
Yo.
Right. The one thing that I had a question about after reading the, proposed resolution that was signed by all the, PTO members was if we needed the, executive board, paragraph in there, any longer. That was needed based on the information from the resolution that you had shared from the meeting they had. Because each individual PTO is coming up with their own bylaws, is my understanding. So I wouldn't take that middle part.
Second bullet point?
Yes. And then just put the annual budget for each PTO is presented to the board by the PTO president for each school and president.
Yeah, I would agree with that part, but I think you should have an executive board. The problem is that account can't go away. The only way that account can go away is to have, you have to have a disbursement out of it. You're gonna have a person that's an executive treasurer that runs it.
Right, but I don't know that, the executive board has not really functioned.
No, I understand that, but what I'm saying is I think the executive board has to be there as far as maybe 2 people. Just to review, because you should have 2 signatures on anything going out, right? But I don't think they need to meet more than once or twice a year. I think the less interaction they have, and I don't see how the other group can't get together and vote on 2 people just to watch that, because that was a long-term thing that's going to be lingering around. I would agree with you wholeheartedly if we didn't have that issue, but that issue is lingering out there for years.
But I think it complicates, and this is probably more than where we should be even as a board of education, but it complicates the current bylaws for the executive board and how it's supposed to function.
Okay? But the question is, who does the disbursement of the money?
Right.
The school board can't do it.
No.
School district can't do it. And having locally school elected people that don't even have knowledge of what that stuff is.
But could the PTO presidents from each school or something in their bylaws make a statement regarding that and address it that way versus having a different executive board as part of their responsibilities or something? I just think having a whole other function is
There has to be one
complicated.
group that owns it, and right now, how many people have tax paperwork in place? Maybe Trailside?
I don't know.
Trailside doesn't even, so there is only one.
Well, 503.
They had it a couple weeks ago. I think Woodfield's the only.
Woodfield's got one, so I mean, every single one of them have to have their own federal paperwork in. You're nonprofit, and right now, you only had one, which was Waterford PTO.
Yeah, sure.
So,
But I don't know your thoughts based on the meeting you've had regarding that, how to address.
I mean, if you ask me, if they're not all independent completely, probably one header that they're running.
I was just wondering, with that resolution that we put together, if Deborah Kowski, I think it's Deborah Kowski and Beth Schilt, they will be the overseers of the money for the lawsuit. And it's written in there that they have to meet with the presidents of the board of the boards to report out on that once a year. Does that replace the executive board piece, those 2 ladies continuing that?
Technically, that's their executive board.
Yeah.
And is that, so is
That sure
that,
sounds like an executive board to me.
so
It
is
doesn't
that
say what the executive board
satisfy
is.
that piece?
I don't think
And
it would
I think the
satisfy.
resolution is written in there that they meet once a year with the presidents.
But really the problem is those, we currently know those people, right?
Do they have to
Everybody
publish
feels
bylaws?
okay with
I don't think they would.
them doing what they're doing, right? Let's say they're not there tomorrow, and somebody else got, right? Had to have something written down that says who these 2 positions are and what they're expected to do. Just because we all know them now and are familiar with them doesn't mean anything to 5 years from now.
True.
This could go on for 30 years, right?
Yeah, how would you feel after, they step down?
So I'm not saying they have to do too much, but we got to have something, executive level of something that says, these people talk to everyone in the group, and they have to work with the presidents of the other group to figure out what to do with the money or how it's currently written, you know? That's the only issue.
Right, because they have to make a decision if that money gets too high, then they reimburse the money out to the sixth
Right,
grades
right.
and things like that, so.
Other than that, they wouldn't have any authority.
No, other than that, that's the only thing, those two people are, the way it says, are monitoring that piece.
Well,
And
not
then
really,
the-
because then they also do the third bullet, the way it's looking like, because they'll present, the executive board will present each individual.
No, I don't think you
No.
should do that. I think each
Right.
PTO should come in,
Right.
as they have done in the past anyway,
Yes.
pretty much.
So that one's changing.
They were to have no correspondence for the budgets of year 3, or
But that's
of
not
4 of
those.
us.
Right, I would change that one,
Yeah.
to an annual budget for each PTO as presented by the Board of Education by the PTO president for each school and treasurer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you want to put a timeline on that, or date it out?
Maybe
Should be
in the fall of
In
each
fall is-
school
Date
year.
it out, just so it doesn't slide by.
probably September, late September. Because school's already running, they already have their budget decided, and they know what they're doing.
So it doesn't get, maybe October, the first October, October
Yeah.
board meeting.
When's that walk to
That's
school?
what
Is
we're
that?
just-
It was October 8th this year.
There you go, middle of October. How's that?
I was gonna say November, because that's,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
already,
In there.
I'm just, I'm
that's the
thinking
third
timing.
week of school already.
Well, they don't have, I mean, that's their money maker there.
Yeah, it is.
So you need, in order to lay things out. But I think it'd be good.
Well, that
if they
money's
had
really
a
being
date.
used for the following year, isn't the walk to
Yeah.
school money for the
following
following
year,
year,
so
so you
they
really.
don't
Oh, okay.
In theory, it should.
So they could
Right.
do it in September, October, I figured October, so
Okay.
September, you've got the school starting and then
October would be good. I think
Yeah, they're
September's
already
too
doing
quick.
their budgets now.
Mhm.
Is that consistent?
Pretty much, because it's based on the money you're making.
I saw 3 head nods, we're good. Sorry.
So late October,
Thanks.
oh, late October for target.
October.
I would say October board meeting.
Yeah, I think that should be adequate. And I would agree that you change that one over to say the president and treasurer of each PTO. But, so their budget, and you would assume their budget would have expenditures and income and showing what they're doing. The important thing is not to control what they're doing, the important thing is to control what they're doing in the schools.
Right, and to make
So
sure.
what
it's safe for
expenditure, you
our
should
goals.
know as a board, who's buying a bunch of extra iPads and things that you do need them, and
Right,
you're gonna get to the point where maybe you have one PTO that's flourishing too much, that now has a one-to-one program in the school, and you're gonna have other parents that are angry when they have the students going to school and say, that school, over there has one iPad per kid. So, I mean, you gotta look at equality over the long term.
so for the point regarding an executive board will be formed, is there a way maybe in there to reference the resolution, or this will dissolve though, that's, the way it reads?
But that's gonna be in place for a while, that
Right.
resolution. So maybe it should reference that, and at that point, then the policy gets
Right.
rewritten.
I think it looks pretty straightforward, because they're doing the bylaws and stuff, and if they want one person and a treasurer, and those two people run that one little thing, and they elect how it's done, let them do it. And if they minimize what those people do, fine, if they maximize some more, fine, whatever.
Does it matter if the parents are not? According to the
Just
policy?
happy hours at PTO. Gotta pay your dollar, and there you are. Right. And this would be a lot easier, obviously, if we didn't have that issue.
Right.
Oh, it's going to be lingering for a long time.
Would it make sense to state something like an executive board would be formed, based on the resolution, and then they, would take the agreed upon? I don't know, I mean, it's the balance of where we should be in this, but
That's what
also,
I'm saying, I would just say, let this, let them figure out what they're doing going forward, so. They've already resolved between them and amongst them how they're going to resolve things and fund things. So there really is not much use for executive board, just let it.
right, and that's, I agree, but that's why I feel like this is too much.
But this doesn't say what the board's even gonna do. They'll let the PDO figure out what that, those group people, and they've already done that based on those people. Some of them, you know? So I would assume they're all, somebody's got to vote for it, they're all coming together and vote together. You vote.
That's great that you're meeting with them and the resolution and Mr. Dr.
Based on what I'm hearing the group say tonight, I'm thinking maybe just a simple sentence, an executive board will be formed based on the resolution of March 2015.
I like that.
And just leave it at that.
You're okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right.
That's a winner.
Thank you.
Dan, to answer your question, when I was at that meeting down at the library with the presidents, after we had the discussion about the resolution, the three of them met and it sounded like they were very collaborative. They talked together, they planned. It was, I was impressed with the dialogue amongst the three of them in the school. So just to answer your question about that. They all seem to be on the same page, working for the same goal.
Future.
I'll bring that back as a first one.
Okay.
To make sense.
Right. Right, so that's all the policy is based on.
Yep.
So then we have our college and career updates.
Yep.
All right, Mrs. Markle and I. All right, in February, I came to you to share some information about the academic career planning and the information, I provided you the information from the state superintendent, from the Department of Public Instruction. Just began some information for you about college and career planning and the 2017 mandates that have been put into place. Then in March, working with the college and career, I brought to you the information from the surveys from the students, the parents, and the teaching staff, and then tried to pull that together into some themes. So tonight, Mrs. Markle and I would like to just review some pieces to kind of pull together where we've been with the College and Career Committee and where we want to go in the future. It's just for informational sake and for questions if you have them. There's no decisions at this time that need to be made. But let me start by just okay. So the goals of the College and Career Team, which have several people in, was to begin to prepare Waterford Graded School District to comply with the state requirements by the 2017-18 school year. So we were gathering information from our community to try to figure out what is the best way to go at this. There are K-12 pieces in this, in the information about the academic and career planning. There's a focus piece for 6th through 8th grade students. We kind of say 5th through 8th grade, and then there's a more focused piece in the high school also. So some of the things that we have been doing is the state came out last year with some new career cluster booklets, so we've been studying those in our team. Going from the 16 career clusters to clustering those clusters into 6 different groups. That's what the state of Wisconsin did. Also, studying a little bit about the financial literacy standards. There were some personal financial literacy standards that were enacted in 2006. And so coming around to look at those financial literacy standards further, we are implementing those financial literacy standards currently to some degree in the math curriculum area, and then also in the EVE class, there's a financial literacy, and Mrs. Markle talked about the junior achievement piece that the 7th grade students went on. So, but looking a little bit further into the financial or personal literacy standards and regard to setting goals, really understand checking and credit cards and how do you get credit and all kinds of things. So coming around and looking at that again, understanding who and how often students need to have career interest conferences, like parents and students and either a counselor or a teacher, could be a variety of people, could be trained in providing not necessarily career in the sense of I'm deciding as a sixth grader that I'm going to be this, but looking at interests, looking at options, looking at careers as a whole. What are your interests? What are your passions? How much does college cost? What are some things we need to make as goals, or what kind of coursework will help us? What are our natural talents? Those kinds of pieces. So a variety of ways that you can have those. You have to have at least one conference in the 6th through 8th area, and one conference if you are high school in the 9 to 12. So different school districts do it different ways. Some have 2 conferences, some have as many as 3. And that's a conference for every student. Every student is required to have a conference.
Is that a state statute or a DPI reference?
DPI.
So you know that's actually a law that states that our school district has to expend the money to do this? Or is it somebody at the DPI coming up with a great idea that they think somebody should pay for other than?
Well, I gave you the information, and it's the DPI. I don't believe it is in law, but it is a requirement. So you can look back at the documents that I gave you, but for today, I'm going to...
Gotcha, I'm just asking.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, but the thing we have to think about, too, is in the rest of the state, a lot of kids are getting career conferences. Is it a good thing for our students to have career conferences? I believe so. I believe so. Maybe you can have a good career conference and it can be not beneficial, but I think depending upon how you do it, I think students need to get exposed to more careers and more ideas about careers and about themselves, interpersonal as well as careers, as early as we can. So it's about that whole piece of careers, even the career pieces that we're teaching in science and in kindergarten and all of that. So it encompasses all of that. So best determine who could assist us with these student-parent conferences to make it manageable on the personnel that we have, because you can just imagine, you know, how we would be able to manage that with almost 180 students per grade level. Who would be doing that if it was only the school counselors that would be at the same time? Looking at ways that we can, from the interest inventories from the students, the parents, and the teachers, how can we raise those theme areas, or we call it the 21st century? High levels of thinking, technology, citizenship, personal financial literacy, collaborative work, creative work, creating an innovative, continuing to excel in creating an innovative instructional learning atmosphere here at Waterford Graded. So we want to continue to do that. And then looking at the impact of this work on the students, teachers, principals, and counselors. So what is the best way that we can embed this into what we're already doing, so it doesn't take us away from other good things that we're doing. The team, Jessica Rather, Kevin Brozick, Darlene Markle, Tricia Petrovich, myself and Sarah Sigmundson studied the academic and career planning initiatives, the 16 career paths that are clustered in the 6 career clusters. And then we worked on the survey and implemented the survey, which you got a copy of. And we talked about the themes and how, we talked a little bit about how well we're doing on those themes. And the team talked about how we might be able to propel our students even further in some of these areas with the high technology we have and the skilled staff, and what would be some of the needs we would have. And then we also spent some time discussing, and Mrs. Marco will go further into this, discussing some options of moving our 5-8 students, but particularly our 6-8, especially with the new curriculum pieces too, to really excel and continue to excel in the areas of being prepared, academic as well as behavioral, technology, thinking skills, to be ready for what they're going to head to in the high school. And then we also talked a little bit at our last meeting about the Project Lead the Way coursework, as well as the high school credit option for middle school students. The high school passed a policy in which middle school students who take math or Spanish high school courses at the middle school, as long as those teachers are certified high school teachers, and they get a C or better, they can receive elective credit at the high school, starting with next year. So we need to make sure that we're ready and that we can share that with parents, and that we're communicating out, and that the rigor of those courses fit in line with the high school syllabuses and assessments and all of those pieces. So that they've pretty much kept up to speed all along, because they have those meetings with the high school, but we just want to go through it one more time and guarantee that. So for 15-16, what are we going to do next year to continue what we're working on? We want to increase the stakeholders in the process. You saw there was a limited amount of parents and administrators and some school counselors on that team. We want to increase that team, thinking to increase the team in the first semester to more 5-8 personnel, and then second semester to add some K-4 personnel. We want to really look at the school counseling and content area curriculum, like math, to strengthen, see what we're already doing and how we can strengthen by maybe just some small tweaks, our career and personal financial literacy work that we're already doing. And then begin to brainstorm some ideas of how we're going to get these career interest conferences or consultations beginning in 16-17. And then to ensure that all of our students really have that high quality technology, being able to produce and work with technology to create things that demonstrate their learning. Jane works on that also, Sarah Shepke. And then increase teacher and administrator training in those areas by perhaps starting with a cohort of 10 to 12 teachers to give them some extended technology instructional training. We have someone coming in, John Kuglin, on June 15th, that will be sharing some innovative and trying to stretch us to the next level. And then out of there, we might be able to have a cohort through our Title II funds for teachers and administrators for next year. And we kept that as a regular cycle to get some cycles going with some people really interested in continuing their technology skills, at all levels. So I think that's very imperative that we provide something that's a routine and a tradition that people can expect to continually grow. Okay, goals for 16-17. The following year, train the administrators and teachers on the new career planning software that's supposed to be coming from the state, pending. There's some listening sessions coming up, so that's very interesting. Begin implementing the career student parent conferences. Some school districts have put these things in place right away as soon as the academic and career planning came out, so I think let's not wait until 17-18. Let's begin to work through that and try to work the bugs out a little bit. And then begin implementing the updated counseling curriculum, personal financial literacy curriculum, and continue to train the next cohort in the technology area. So just some thoughts for us to be thinking about. Any questions before I let Mrs. Markle take over?
Got a lot of questions, but
All right.
Do you want your questions, do you want the questions first, or?
no, I've been on with you a long time on this career stuff.
Yes,
so
I know
I'll
you
listen to
have
what
it.
you say first.
So you might be able to answer
some
all
of
that.
the stuff up here.
Well, we're going to take some intermittent steps next year, and then we'll be bringing back some other steps for the following year. Some small steps for next year in tweaking the master schedule of the way we'll put some things in for next year. Right now we have math is 90 minutes every other day, and in 8th grade, to align with this high school piece, we're going to go to the 45-minute math period. That will be the same as the high school, so it'll be a transitional piece for 8th grade. As they move up to the high school, I'm going to keep the 7th grade at the 90 minutes every other day for coming off of the 6th grade piece. So keep that 6th, 7th alignment. That'll open me up a half a block in the math area, so keep that in your thought right now. With that spiraling curriculum that's taking place in science, we started it in 6th grade this year. We'll move to 7th grade next year, 8th grade the following year. I'll be going back to 4 quarters of science. I took away that 1 quarter of science for the Project Lead the Way. I'll be getting that back into the science piece. And then that will still relieve, with the reduction of the math, that will be able to offer the required that everybody does have to take a Project Lead the Way course in 8th grade and 7th grade still, because I really think that's important. And we get some of the career things in that area. In the 7th grade area, I'm going to reduce the health piece to a quarter, so they'll FIED all year long, every other day, which equals a semester. And then they have right now health every other day all year long, which equals a semester, but we'll reduce that down to a quarter, and then we'll put the STEM piece, I should say the Project Lead Away piece in place in 7th grade. Looking at the phase-in piece the following year for 8th grade, but just talking about next year, that's how I gained the Project Lead the Way piece for the 7th graders. In the Project Lead the Way program, you have to have a required class that all kids have to take before you can have electives off of it. So for next year, we'll keep that as a 7th grade offering, where in 7th grade they'll be taking the design and modeling piece. It opens up in 8th grade then me to offer electives, depending upon interest areas, based upon the survey and so forth with the kids and their interest areas. They'll be able to do the automation robotics piece. If electives, they do the energy environment. We can move to the medical detective piece, and then they have just come out, Dan, just for you, I believe. They just designed this course for programming with computers and so forth, all in that area. So we're looking at that particular piece, adding that on possibility. And then there's also an opportunity down the road for the green architecture, which will take place with some of the architectural pieces for the kids. So those are long-term planning with Project Lead the Way. And I'll be able to compress and put that into place for electives. Every 8th grader will have to take 1 elective of Project Lead the Way, but those kids that are excited about this type of areas, and then as a high school, I should say, will be able to take more. That'll lead into the high school, because they're now offering the Project Lead the Way up at the high school. And by kids taking these offerings, they'll by senior year be able to do that independent study, which gets them college places and money and credits and so forth. So I think it'll be a nice progression working with Dan up at the high school, what we can do down here, and then what they can do and open up at the high school. So those are the tweaks I'm going to make next year. I'll come back to you next year with some other tweaks that we might make in the master schedule to accommodate some things in that area. I'm taking a look at a couple other things, but the big change is the science piece getting back with a spiraling curriculum, the reduction of the health in 7th grade only to gain that space, and then of course to align our math with the high school so the kids can get that math credit. It has to align with the amount of time they're offering up there, which is 45 minutes. I need to go to the 45-minute block for my kids also. So I can explain that in more depth if you need it. That's just kind of a brief overview, but that's how we're going to get some of the pieces in. Questions?
Okay, question?
Here goes Dan.
No.
I'm going to set the
First
time.
of all, thank you for putting it together. I know my comment of asking about whether this is a requirement is a very specific point in that, and I've been down this road with Darlene, she knows it for years. We've been looking at how to morph the EVE program. And we had a long, extensive review with parents involved and other personnel in the district and come up with a whole way to morph the EVE. So we were way out in front of what the state is requiring, because we noticed that things like teaching students how to fly planes in EVE does absolutely nothing, and I mean nothing, for any students in our district. I know personally people that fly for United that have gotten pay cuts of 50% over the last 10 years. Nobody is making money in flying planes, so us teaching students how to do planes was foolish. And it may be fun, it may be nice, it may be cute, but it does nothing for a career. But the issue I have is every time I hear something from the state, I have to ask myself, is this a state mandate? If it is the DPI paying, for example, software cost? We all have been down this road with educator effectiveness, right? Who's going to pay for the software? Is it a requirement? Do we have to pay for it? Is the school board going to be hit for $40,000 for a software cost with annual maintenance fees? And you know that's going to be.
They haven't figured those things out yet.
They haven't figured them out. We know how the state works, right? And specifically, we know how the DPI works. DPI will take somebody's mention and run with it. Again, educator effectiveness, 3 lines and a huge budget. And they ran with it and morphed into 20,000 pages. So, and then the same thing I look at when I hear all these keywords, they all sound great, 21st century this, everybody's learning that, technology this and that. You know what, right now, I tell any student I know to go into welding. They can make 6 figures in welding right off the bat if they're a master welder. You don't need to be anybody else, you need to be a welder. Welders are right now in high demand, plumbers are in huge demand, electricians, you can't find electricians. Everybody's retirement from them, nobody was going into them, so now, because nobody was building, there's no construction, now there's no plumbers and electricians anymore. The guys in it are making a huge amount of money, but there's not enough people to fill it from our construction jobs. So our issue comes down to, and has always been, on the Eve redo, was what careers should people be looking at? And I don't know why we would be spending a lot of career counseling time with anybody lower than a 6th grade level discussing a career. They've never been opened up to what the world of careers is. It's cute to say, are you interested in math? But every kid probably either likes math or doesn't like math. Doesn't mean they're going to have a career based on it. Yeah? So I don't know how you could have counseling on that. I'm not quite sure what the math going on 45 minutes. I understand to align with them. Are you going to do a more repetitive basis or something at 45 minutes? Or what are you doing?
Right now, Lisa aligns what she does with the high school. Right now, our pacing is exactly like the high school. What we get is more time in there for re-explaining, reworking, different things like that. But now that they're going to get the credit, we'll have to stay at the rigorous pacing that they're doing up there without that extra every other day time for the kids.
But you're going to every other day, 90
right now. It's 45 minutes every day,
yep.
And it's 90 every other day. We'll just stay with the 45 minutes every day in 8th grade.
Okay, so how does that become more rigorous when ours sounds like we have more time?
Well,
reduce the amount of time.
The rigorous pieces, we're doing the same instruction as the high school.
So you got to push more through.
But we're pushing is the same amount through as the high school. Yes, Lisa will have to compress that pacing guide into a smaller chunk. You're correct on that,
right.
Dan.
So the kids have less time to study the same amount they used to have every other day of night.
You can state it that way, or it's kind of how you redistribute what are some of the things you're doing in the class, yes.
So I understand that. So, but you have less time to bring it all in if you're a student that may be on the low end of that class. Or
what we would say though is the kids that are going to be getting the high school credit should be able to be doing it at the same level as the kids up at the high school, because they're basically on the same equal playing field, just in a different building. The kids that are not going to get the credit, you're correct, we're going to have to take a look at that particular piece and see where that's going to, how that's going to mesh in.
Yeah. The more important piece is going to be is that we were very good at pushing kids and getting them to that point. They didn't get the high school credit, then they got to the high school, they had to take 3 credits anyways, and they were all kind of forced to go into calculus as a curriculum.
Yes.
And majority weren't doing well in calculus. So the issue is not necessarily, they're not going to get math credit anyways. They're only getting elective credit, which isn't bad.
Right.
Right? But I don't know that necessarily reducing our amount of time instruction-wise.
Well, it's going to open up,
advantage.
they're hoping to be able to get more kids into the advanced classes up there by this, that's what the goal is, obviously. And so by the best of the best coming out of our program to continue their programming, I don't want to speak for the high school, but to be able to continue the advancement of the kids in the math instead of, like you say, only going up to 1 set and then not taking that extra math credit. That's what they're looking to extend that.
Do we know are there getting elective credit versus math credit?
That I do not know. I didn't attend the school board meetings on that piece.
And like when you audit a course and you got these systems, they can charge you and give you credit for it.
Well, and also because of the point that when you run out of coursework in high school, then you have to go to the tech school, or they have to pay for that.
That's maybe the advanced point of attraction.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
What I'm more interested in is, and this sounds great, but as I listen to that, boy, it just screams how we were kind of backdoored by the Common Core thing. Now DPI is going like this, oh, it wasn't us, we had nothing to do with DPI. The state says, well, we didn't institute DPI. And DPI is saying, oh, well, the school board instituted it. So now by letting you kind of run free on this one here, And I don't want to discount the fact that we've had a lot of discussion on this in the past. So by letting you run free and spending time doing it, the school board has kind of, you know, given the go-ahead on this without actually ever voting on it. Is that something you approve of doing as a school? So the issue comes into, this could all transpire and work its way and be there, and the school board never voted on it, which is exactly what happened down in Warren. Good or bad or different, I'm not saying it's good or bad or different, right? I'm just saying it was never voted on. The school board is the only one that voted curriculum. We're already talking about instituting, having counseling sessions for, you know, K through 4 you were talking about for a little bit there and stuff. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say it's not good or bad or different. It's just that it was never voted on by anybody in the school. It may be pushed by the DPI, but there's no state mandate for it at a state law level. The DPI may be pushing it, but that doesn't mean we have to agree with the DPI.
I think what Kathy was trying to do is just inform you guys of options that the state has available that school systems could do. I don't think she's necessarily saying, well, I don't speak for her, but I took it to our meeting that we're not, it doesn't say we're going to that tomorrow.
No, and I understand.
But she was giving you a wide variety of options and venues we could go through. We're not there next year. Next year, we're just taking a look at increasing offerings for Project Lead the Way for 8th graders by reducing math and the piece in the health piece for the...
And don't get me wrong, I like Project Lead the Way, it's well thought out. That's in and above a DPI. I think DPI has nothing to do with Project Lead the Way. Anytime DPI gets their fingers in it, things get weird. The programs are never done correctly. Software's cost you money, but they don't know when they're coming out. 15 revisions on the educator effectiveness, you know. It's just kind of all gobbled up there. So I would just caution, and it's really for Dawn's knowledge, she's the only one on the board here next month, right? And Tom, but he's not here. I'm just saying for your knowledge. It's one of those things, you got to keep an eye on DPI because DPI is not, they're not legislators. They don't get to make law. They make rules, but guess what? If a rule is not law, you don't have to follow it.
But just to clarify, you're talking about 6, 8 conferences, but collaborating with K-4 teachers and that their curriculum builds to 6, 8.
Right, the curriculum for K4 is supposed to have the curriculum from the state for counseling, the school counseling guidance curriculum. Students should be having a lot of exposure to career. That's one of the key components in it.
You're going to counsel a 3rd grader when they don't even know what the world is.
Well, you teach them,
we provide
themes.
You're right. If you walked around and did some surveys of students in our school district and they were in 3rd grade, what kind of careers would they have said they would have had exposure to? Because kids can have depending upon your curriculum and your interest in what is instructionally appropriate, you can have kids who are very knowledgeable at 3rd and 4th grade about lots of different careers that are out there, and that's what we need to do, expose them. My purpose as a curriculum director is to look at what the state is mandating, but look at it through the eyes of what is really necessary for our students, what's in the best interest. What are our other school districts providing? And do we need to provide that? Are our parents going to want that? You know, those are the things that, and some of these things are really, really good for kids.
I understand all that, but you're taking cues from a parent to the school board person's there all the time. What I've seen is the school establishment in the state and the country has pushed all students that said, well, if you want to do great in life, you're going to have to get a college degree. And guess what? We got a lot of people with useless college degrees now that have no way to get a job and pay back all that student loan debt. And we've got all these jobs, we've got millions of jobs unfilled that are entry-level jobs and or things like welding, plumbing, electrical, all these things that schools never told people about and never told kids about and never said, you know what, by the way, you can go into plumbing and you got an apprenticeship for 5 or 10 years or something and you'll be making X number of dollars when you get out of that and you'll be able to retire earlier.